In the quiet suburbs of 1970s Chicago, a shadow walked among the manicured lawns. If you lived in Norwood Park, you knew him. He was the successful contractor with a booming laugh who threw lavish summer parties. He was a respected leader, but perhaps you knew him best by the painted smile he wore to entertain sick children. He called himself Pogo the Clown. Children adored him, and neighbors trusted him blindly. He was the picture of the American dream. Yet, behind the grease paint and friendly waves across the fence, a chilling darkness was festering. The friendly neighbor was a carefully constructed mask, an illusion designed to hide an insatiable appetite. No one could have imagined that the clown making balloon animals held secrets so depraved. The monster was hiding in plain sight. The trap was laid with chilling simplicity. It began in 1972, cloaked in the gentle guise of opportunity. He ran a successful contracting business, which served as a perfect honey trap for young, earnest boys looking to earn an honest wage. These were teenagers with bright eyes and futures stretching out before them, stepping eagerly toward a man who promised them a paycheck and a trade. He offered them a ride, a chance to see a job site, or just a quiet conversation about their ambitions. His voice was warm, his demeanor so deeply reassuring that any flicker of instinct or hesitation was instantly smoothed away. They climbed into his car willingly. They walked through his front door with polite smiles, entirely unaware that the threshold they just crossed was the absolute point of no return. Once inside the quiet, unassuming house, the very air seemed to thicken. The welcoming smile of the businessman melted away, revealing the cold, calculating gaze of a predator. He possessed a terrifying knack for disarming his guests, using a disorienting blend of casual conversation and sudden dominance. He would often speak of magic tricks, a twisted extension of his cheerful clown persona, convincing these trusting teenagers to try on a pair of handcuffs just to show them a neat escape trick. It was a deeply sick, psychological game. The sharp click of the metal snapping shut around their wrists was the agonizing sound of the trap springing closed. In a single heartbeat, the illusion of safety shattered. Disbelief morphed into creeping terror as the boys realized they were utterly at his mercy. While the unimaginable was happening behind closed doors, life in the neighborhood carried on with sickening normalcy. He was still the life of the party, standing over a sizzling grill in his backyard, pouring cold drinks for the very people whose children were at risk. But the earth beneath their feet held a devastating secret. A mass grave was quietly, methodically growing in the dark, damp crawlspace right under the floorboards of his house. Sometimes, a strange, sickly sweet odor would seep up into the living room. He would brush it off with a wave of his hand, blaming a broken sewer pipe or a buildup of moisture. The neighbors believed him. The visitors believed him. They sat on his couch, drinking his coffee, blissfully oblivious to the silent screams buried just inches below. For 6 agonizing years, the nightmare dragged on unchecked. But even the most cunning predators eventually stumble. The beginning of the end arrived in the bitter winter of 1978, centering around a boy named Robert Piest. Robert was just 15 years old, a hard-working kid who stepped out of a local pharmacy to speak with the charismatic contractor about a potential job. It was the same deadly bait. Robert told his mother he was going outside for just a moment. He never walked back through those doors. But this time, the monster made a fatal miscalculation. Robert was a boy with a mother waiting nearby, a family who immediately knew something was horribly wrong. The carefully worn mask of the friendly neighborhood contractor was finally, irreparably beginning to crack. The disappearance of Robert Piest sent a frantic shockwave through the local police department. Investigators quickly zeroed in on the last man seen speaking to the boy. When detectives arrived at the house to question the contractor, they were met with his usual arrogance and a forced, easy smile. But they also met something else. As they stepped into the warmth of the home, a thick, putrid scent hit the back of their throats. That same sickly, sweet odor he had dismissed to his neighbors for years. The detectives were not so easily fooled. They placed the house under heavy, around-the-clock surveillance. The hunter was now the hunted. Every time he looked out his window, they were there, watching in the cold, waiting for the slightest mistake as the invisible noose tightened around his neck. The relentless pressure finally shattered the illusion completely. Armed with a search warrant, investigators breached the home, driven by the suffocating stench that hung heavy in the air. They bypassed the comfortable living room and the pristine kitchen, their flashlights piercing the suffocating gloom of the dirt crawl space beneath the floorboards. As they began to dig into the damp, uneven earth, the true, unfathomable scale of the horror was finally unearthed. It wasn't a broken pipe. It was a graveyard. Inch by agonizing inch, they uncovered the remains of 26 young men and boys, discarded like refuse in the shallow dirt. The chilling realization washed over the seasoned detectives. They were standing ankle-deep in the grisliest crime scene in American history. The nightmare, it seemed, could not be contained beneath the floorboards. The crawl space was horrifyingly full, but the predator's insatiable hunger had not ceased. As investigators meticulously combed the rest of the property, the grim tally continued to climb. 3 more young souls were pulled from the cold earth of his backyard, buried under the guise of innocent landscaping and concrete. But even the yard wasn't enough to hide his towering sins. When the frozen ground could take no more bodies, he turned to the murky, unforgiving currents of the nearby Des Plaines River. Under the dead of night, he discarded the remaining victims into the freezing water, tossing them away as if their bright, promising lives meant absolutely nothing. The entire city held its breath, drowning in a river of tears. The monster was finally dragged out of the shadows and thrust into the unforgiving glare of the courtroom. The date was February the 6th, 1980, and the entire nation was watching. He was officially charged with an unimaginable 33 counts of murder. He sat there, a chilling portrait of arrogance, desperately trying to manipulate the court as he had his trusting victims. But the staggering weight of evidence could not be buried. The prosecution methodically unveiled the absolute depths of his depravity. The grim reality was laid bare for all to witness. When the gavel finally fell, it echoed like thunder. The jury returned to deliver a swift, crushing verdict. The man who masqueraded as a clown was declared guilty. He was convicted on all 33 counts of murder. For 14 long years, the killer sat in the sterile confines of death row, a stark contrast to the dark, crowded crawl space he had created. He spent his days painting twisted portraits of clowns, a grotesque reminder of the mask he once wore so flawlessly. He never showed an ounce of true remorse, clinging to his arrogance even as the clock ticked down on his own life. The end finally came on May 10th, 1994. Stripped of his freedom and his power, the monster was strapped to a gurney in the execution chamber. The lethal injection flowed through his veins, a cold, clinical end to a man who had delivered so much agonizing terror to the world. As he took his final breath, The heavy, suffocating shadow he cast over 33 families finally, mercifully, began to lift.